I think the governance bit of ESG is what makes a lot of money for companies, but it's usually the most least talked about. So Edna, if I'm a business owner and I'm coming to you saying I need an ESG strategy for my business, what is the steps to step of doing that?
Okay, I'd forgotten I don't have that anymore. So when it comes to the steps to step, we go through 3 processes, 3 main category of buckets. So just go with me. So 3. The first one is understanding. The understanding is trying to just map where are you as a business. And the reason I usually emphasize on this step is there are so many things businesses are currently doing that you don't associate with ESG. For example, you perhaps have a HR department that does things that are compliance-led by the government, but those are the social part of the ESG conversation. Another on an individual that I really like on an individual level is we all have blue band containers in our fridge. Do you consider that as an ESG practice? Because it's circular economy. That's what so there are some things that we are currently doing. So ESG is not something we are taking from the air, especially for us guys in Africa. We've been doing it. So it's that understand phase is trying to figure out where are you. And we do that through like 3 small tools. So those ones I'll breeze over. We can talk about them later. But it's just figuring out what's the gap assessment? And the one I really want to highlight is what's your materiality assessment? And that is determining 5 to 7 topics that are important to your business. Don't take all the 17 SDG goals. You will pass out. As in don't take all the GRI indicators. There'll be too much and you'll be stretched too thin and it becomes overwhelming. So you need to figure out 5 to 7, don't go beyond that. And that's what we advise our clients as well. Then after that is the resilience assessment, is trying to figure out of the environmental and social, how do they plug into your business? So once you understand that phase, we go to the design. And this one I'll breeze through. And the design is coming up with your strategy framework. Out of those 5 or 7 topics, what's your strategy towards achieving a certain target? Then after that, you do the metrics and target. Mike talked about this and was amazing at it. And then coming up with a plan of achieving those targets. Then ensuring your capacity internally is up to date to be able to achieve those targets. So that's the design phase. Then we go to the activate, which touches on the governance. So under the activate, we have governance and risk management. And governance, the reason it is very important, I think we'll talk about this with the amazing ladies over here. Notice, ladies, happy. But we'll talk about it, is because you need both top-down approach, but also bottom-up approach. And the reason you do this is you need the buy-in, because you have an amazing strategy, but who's implementing? Your people. And you need to make them understand what they are doing, why it is important, but not just your people, but your systems and processes need to go hand in hand as well. So once you work on your governance and risk management, we go to the easier part, which is the measurement and the reporting. Okay, I'm saying easy, but to some, it may be a very big hurdle. But if you set your metrics right during the design phase, then we're just coming to say, okay, so by 2023, we needed to do this. This is how we are measuring. So where's the data to show how we've been doing? Then we now do the reporting and then the assurance component. So that's the steps to step. And I think whoever would want a bit more can just reach out.
I'm just listening to you go through it and breezing through it because it's information you have and it's a space where you are an expert. And I'm just thinking, as an everyday SME, why do I need all this? And Noreen, maybe you can speak to this because I know you're very passionate about SMEs and developing them. Why should SMEs care about ESG?
All right, thank you. I think SMEs, first, let's be very, very frank about it.
Yeah.
The minute we bring in discussions about sustainability, circularity, tend to wonder, how does it benefit my business? Because SMEs, first for them, it's about profit. And actually, it's just about survival first. So anything that takes away a shilling is not welcome to that business. And that shilling could be not monetary only, it could also be time. Yeah? So if you're dealing with SMEs and trying to break this down, I always tell people, first and foremost, if you're able, go to their place of work. Yeah? If you're dealing with the market, the traders in Gikomba, wear your sports shoes, make yourself look comfortable and go there and then pass on your message where they are. Secondly, show them examples of where it has worked and let it be tangible example that they can relate to. You cannot go and give them first world experiences and expect them to relate, because immediately they'll think then you're wasting their time. But SMEs are actually very adaptable. And I'll give an example. I handheld the setting up of the first EPZ in Western Kenya, first female-owned in Kenya. And it's owned by a lady called Benta. So, Benta is in the mtumba business. So there comes a disruption. Government has closed their businesses. And she said, in another 10 years, she's not seeing like her business will be sustainable. So she said, okay, she'll open a factory. And she said she'll open a factory in her home area so that she can work with girls, because in Kisumu area, girls, drop off from education, and then we have the early pregnancies and stuff. So she wanted to help the girl child, which was all good. So we got to the point of sustainability. We've moved through everything. The building is standing and everything. So now we asked her the question on sustainability. First, when it came to environmental, she didn't, she was asking, hizi vitu zote nahitaji kwa nini? Because she's not seeing the value of that. She's not looking at the tomorrow of it, right? So we had experts from Moi University guiding her on that. And when it was broken down to her in a simplified manner, she was able to appreciate that, because she had ticked the box on social, because, she was working with the girls, securing ensuring that they get a training, certification and all that. Yeah. But once the others were also broken down, she could understand. So that's an example, of how it should be done for businesses. Show where the money is or where the benefit is, and then it makes it much simpler.
Yeah, I like that you said show where the money is, because in most cases, people, when they think about spending money, like you said, every coin should be accounted for, and if it's going out, it has to go and double. Most people think of sustainability as a spend, not necessarily an investment. And Grace, I know you work a lot with ESOs, entrepreneur support organizations. When you are working with them, I don't know what the right phrase is, how do you ensure that pipeline has sustainability embedded in it?
Thank you. Let me go back a bit and say that at Aspen's Network of Development Entrepreneurs, we have a 3-case mandate. One is to make a case for small and growing businesses. Another one is to increase the effectiveness of the organizations that support small and growing businesses. And thirdly is, how do we support entrepreneurial ecosystems? So that ecosystem that has that supporting of environment all the way from when a business is born to when it's growing. So think about policy, think about strategy, think about financial and non-financial support. We are a network that is able to bring these resources to businesses. Now, as a network of ESOs, and how do we support them to ensure that what their help, their support is sustainable, is by ensuring that they are entrenching this within their programs and ensuring that they're entrenching it from the beginning to the end. We were talking at break time how businesses, because even ESOs are businesses, right? And they sometimes do not understand what impact they're having, like you've said. But when you're able to get the support that you need, you're able to understand, I've employed people from Kibera. I'm having actually, because they're considered populations, marginalized populations, right? So I've employed people from there. Then you encounter that I want to expand, and when I expand and I go to a certain region, it's hard for my staff to get to work easily. So I've decided, let me get them a place they can stay close by that will enable them to come to work easily. You don't realize that is impact. You're actually ensuring that you're creating an inclusive environment for them. Then you think, I'm spending a lot of money on electricity. Note, it's driven by the profits, the revenues, the margins. My margins are smaller because I'm having a lot of electricity costs. But if I switch to LED, I probably will bring those costs down. That in itself is an environmental impact. And we're already doing it, it's just that we do not know. So we come from a place of building up, creating that awareness, educating from the stakeholder approach that we've talked about here, shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, and also from the SDG approach. What SDG do you want to understand? When you look at the big audacious goal that you have for this business and you think I'll never attain it, that's your impact, right? What SDG does it align to? And then you work backwards. Today, where do I start from? You prioritize, what do I want to do? I want to help women, I want to help youth, I want to help my community, I want to help the environment. But where do you start? Like she said, choose 5 to 7 SDGs that you can work on. Then look at today. I think the problem is we look at it as an addition instead of the core part of our businesses. Bilab and Lucy, who are supposed to be here, has a fantastic model that talks about impact business models. And these impact business models are, how do you merge profit and purpose at the same time? So let me give you an example. We've talked about a lot of CSR today, right? And you can start as CSR, but how do you transition it into a program where you're able to move from point A to point B? Let's talk about at the end of the year, it's Christmas, there's a community, group, a home that you take food to. Sindio? Yeah? And you've started. But can you be able to tell what your contribution actually does for these people? No, because you've ticked a box. But how do we move from point A to point B? At the beginning of the year, you say, okay, we want to support or build a class or bring water or this. Then you're able to track how your contribution has actually been able to help. As an operational practice, you will find that you're going and giving this community food. But really, you cannot track your effectiveness. You cannot attribute it to your impact. So you come back and say, we will do it differently. We'll start educating them about nutritional value. We'll start teaching them about farming. We'll start a small kitchen, like a kitchen garden, and then we'll use this to cook. Now you can see, no longer are you providing them food. Now you're giving them education. You're getting outcomes on health. And it starts by understanding the end goal, then work backwards to see what is it do I have capacity to do, and then integrate it into your core business day by day without doing anything extra. Because the problem comes when I'm trying to add a big budget, I'm trying to measure things. You can start with as small as a Google form. You can start as small as an Excel sheet. The other way, apart from the strategy, is now you have understood your strategy and then you integrate it into roles. If you're already in HR, are you tracking what is professional development? A lot of us will go to train something when you realize there's an issue. Tulikuwa na kitu jana, customer service was bad, I think I need to train on that thing. That is very ad hoc. That becomes an operational practice. But if you go back and say, every year to maintain a caliber of culture at my organization, these are the trainings that we'll go through. Remember, repetition reemphasizes. There are companies that have a policy. If you want to go continue employment to the next year, you must complete 40 hours of training a year. It is easy. YouTube videos, right? Coursera, all these things are free. They have the laptop, they have the internet, they have the time. And then you attribute that 1 hour that they can train for that. What have you done? You've not spent any money. You've not added a new role. You have just capacity built on what you have, and then you can be able to track what are the incidences. Have they gone down? Have they gone up? So it's understanding from the beginning, what do I want to see? Work backwards. What do I have? How do I prioritize? What low-hanging resources can I include in my business? Not add anything extra. And then as you grow, you'll start seeing the data that you have, what trends it's showing you. where do I need to change? Where do I need to work more? Do I need to inject more money? You'll be able to see that very simplistically before now you can go to Edna and tell Edna, here, I'm ready for you. There's actually a pathway to get there.
Yeah, going back to Edna, when we talk about governance, it mostly matters to do with the stakeholders of any business. So customers, suppliers, maybe the board, whoever it is that the business affects directly. When you're designing these ESG structures for SMEs, at what point do you integrate, or how do you bring up the conversation of the stakeholders? Or does the 3-point structure that you mentioned tie to specific stakeholders that the business has touch points with?
Okay, so at the understand stage that I mentioned the materiality assessment, the place you're trying not to pass out by just picking 5 to 7. At that particular point is when you engage your stakeholders, how we do the materiality is you determine from a business perspective what is important for us. Then on the other side, let's take the X and Y graphs we did in high school and primary. I know it could be traumatic for some of us, but just go with me. So one side is the business impact internally. Then the other side is what matters to our stakeholders. And Mike did an excellent job by showing us the stakeholder mapping or graph over there, where you need to determine your stakeholders based on the power and the influence. Yeah? So you don't need to get someone over there who perhaps has no impact on your business, or you don't have your impact. So you need to do your stakeholder mapping process very carefully. Then after that, during that materiality assessment stage, you could go about it in different ways. You could create a survey if you're trying to reach very many stakeholders quickly, or less than 5 minutes of time. They fill up the survey, you analyze the data, you have what's important for them. You could do interviews with them if you're in a position to have conversations with them. It could just be observation as well, just especially for SMEs. We need to do a lot of research for our products. So it could be also observation-based kind of research. Then once you do that, you come analyze the data and come up. So that's the first stage of engaging with your stakeholders.
Okay.
Then it's an ongoing journey from there, because you don't know what's important for them and then leave them. During your design stage, you need to have a validation session of the strategy with them just to get a temperature feel of do they understand and buy into the strategy. Then also, when you're looking down the supply chain, you need to walk the journey across the supply chain with your stakeholders as well. Just that's a brief sense of it.
Okay. Noreen, because you have a background in government, and to me that brings about the conversation of compliance and regulation. Do you think that SMEs need to be strong-armed by regulation and compliance for them to adapt to ESG, or just a culture thing that needs to be championed for more?
Sorry, do they need to be strong?
Strong-armed, like forced. Like if there's a regulation,
Forced.
then...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. To answer your question, no, they don't need to be strong-armed. I don't think anyone needs to be forced to do what it is that they don't want to do. And let's not forget, SMEs are the masters.
Yeah.
By the time your business is surviving, they say businesses die after the first, second birthday. Mm-hmm. If you see a business that's surviving, that's for someone who's been through it all. Because remember, as an entrepreneur, you're everything, You're the financier, you're the social media, you're everything. You're almost even, sometimes even the cleaner, and you're everything, basically. So you're not going to let anyone play around with that, because also it's sustaining your household, yeah, and your family. You're not going to let anyone play around with that. And that is why when we speak to government bodies, and you can see that the stance is softening as we go on, you see KRA and KEBS actually now speaking to businesses and front-facing them. Yeah. And like before, when you used to hide money in your house because you knew they'd get to your accounts and they'd get to everything. But even now, if you're on the spotlight and they need to get to you, they need to have a discussion with you first before anything. But currently, we're not going to bury our heads in the sand and not say that SMEs actually ran away from KRA and the Three Sisters, KEBS, anti-counterfeit and what, because also there's been a lack of communication, no channel of communication, proper channel of communication. And that's something that, we're hoping as time goes by, it's really, really worked on. So SMEs do not need to be forced armed. They actually should be treated like the clients that they are, because they're actually clients. Yeah. You've just had Marianne mention that they contribute to the revenue collection 88 billion. Yeah, so that's a corporate. But even an SME, the 10,000 that they're contributing is still something, right? And SMEs actually want to comply. They have no problem whatsoever complying. But they also want you to understand the struggles that they're going through. They want you to understand where the shoe pinches. They want you to understand that what you see my business is actually not what it is. You can see it looking flamboyant on Instagram and Facebook, but behind the scenes, things are different. Yeah, kwa ground vitu ni tofauti.
Yes.
Or you might see the entrepreneur and see that, they look like they're living a healthy lifestyle. But things could actually be different. Maybe that person has just decided, I love life, so I'll show up. Yeah, I'll wear gold, I'll drive a good car, I'll live a good life. But that doesn't maybe reflect with their business, right? So you cannot judge business owners and businesses based on what you perceive or what you think you know. So that can only be resolved in terms of having a relationship both ways. Government with the businesses, businesses with the government. And for SMEs, it's key for them to understand that to engage government, you cannot engage them as an individual. And I like one of the respondents in the morning who said, join an organized association or a registered association. That's the only way government will listen to you, right? And you'll find that the issue you have, trust me, hundreds also have the same issue. Yeah? So if you want government to do something, it's good if you come together. And that way, trust me, they stop very fast to listen to your voice. Huh? There's this lady on Twitter, Hanifa or someone, who's been stalking Sakaja about pipeline. You think that Hanifa is working by herself? She's not. She has a group of resident association who are backing her up. Probably she's the confident one enough to take on Sakaja, right? But she probably has pipeline association, and every day they're on his case, and every day, and they do something, they don't even, weirdly enough, they don't even say thank you. They move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
But you have to speak as an organized voice. And I also tell traders, when we go to the markets and stuff, and we've been able to see that it works. Like, you don't like the 3% turnover tax? You have MSME Alliance, which is an umbrella association of different types, boda, mitumba sellers. It has everyone under MSME Alliance. MSME Alliance, mseme mnataka kuona mkubwa wa KRA, 3% does not work for you. And you'll find that now with the pressure, when they see the numbers and you go for that meeting and Kikomba Association says, in our value chain, we have 20,000 people, Kenyans that we support, we have this number of people. When they hear numbers, they stop and actually listen.
Yeah.
Because remember, it's through votes that government is formed at the end of the day also, right? So the power remains with the SMEs, but also you find, strangely enough, that SMEs would not mostly have the courage to actually step into that, right? So they shy off and they're scared and they don't want their businesses to be known because of the reasons I mentioned when I started out. But I'd just like to remind you this afternoon, the power actually lies with you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Grace, through your work at Aspen and the ESOs that you work with, what is that one story that stands out for you that you would say this is a result of a sustainability plan that we have in our program?
There are many stories. I can highlight a few. There's a lady called Maureen. Maureen is a founder of Nyayo Moms. Nyayo Moms is a platform that has brought all the business ladies at Nyayo Estate Nyayo State is the biggest fenced community, right, in Nairobi. She has 1,300 businesses under that platform. Because she was able to identify a problem in her community. She saw there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of business ladies who probably are even replicating each other. You know how Kenya is. Ukifungua hapa, tunafungua tatu. Then that wave dies, and then we open a fashion house. The rest of us do that. Waves dies. But she was able to see a bigger vision, and she was asking herself, how do I ensure that there are linkages between these mamas? How do they collaborate to be able to face a bigger plate, right, of revenues for themselves? How do they even venture outside of the estate and be able to get more opportunities? And so she created these groups so that she can be able to sell that idea of the bigger picture. Remember, I talked about the bigger picture, where you want to increase access to products, where you want to bring more women with you, gender inclusion, where you want to be able to increase revenues by collaboration and opportunities. See, they all tie back to some SDG somewhere, right? And then she was able to come back and work backwards and create that strategy that allowed her to do that, right? We also have, enough businesses that are coming out of, like, me give an example of an ESO like Wild International. Wild International really helps businesses to solve the problem that they are trying to solve. They do not come and ask you, what's your strategy? No, they ask you, what problem are you trying to solve? Because here's the thing. As an entrepreneur, if your motivation is to just make money, we've seen that. You make money, venture capital comes and says, we love what you're doing. Can we either buy you out? And then you're bought out and you're like, yes, I made my money, and you've gone. You no longer exist, we no longer see your footprint, right? Or if you're just being pushed by making money and you don't have someone to buy you out, so you're not exiting, you keep shifting that product or that service that you're selling instead of refining it. But if there's an anchor to why you're doing this business, maybe you've seen a problem in your community, that anchor will drive you to ensure that you keep refining that business until it works, to solve that problem and to make the money that you want. So Wild International will ask you, what problem are you solving? After you tell them what problem you're solving, they'll go back and help you organize a business strategy that will allow you to address that problem. We've had people say, this is my strategy. And then when you look at their marketing strategies, when you look at the products they have, when you look at the customers they have, they do not align. They do not align. An example, a guy created an innovation from scratch, a meter that is able to break down power from tokens, that token machine. Yeah. So let's say you're in a building and you guys do not have meters that are broken down. So he invented this meter that is able to separate that. Now, in a building without a meter, will he come to every person to tell them to buy that meter, or he'll go to the landlord? He'll go to the landlord, right? But in his mind, his marketing included a segment for customers. So he's spending a lot of energy trying to convince customers to require, but he should actually be focusing on landlords. These ESOs help you to refine those small things that you didn't think. Or you have a lot of electricity costs, you have a lot of employee costs. It helps you to see, where can I merge roles? Where can I separate them? What are the things in my operations I can reduce? Changing, like the example I gave, changing bulbs to LED. What if I don't use Kanjo's water and I buy filters and have them refilled? There are small things that they help you to see, how do you reduce your overheads? How do you reorganize your operations for efficiencies? And then how do you manage these two? So from just a few examples, that's how they help. Yeah.
Okay. Edna, what is the one question I should have asked and I didn't, as we wrap up?
Or someone asked me this question, not the one you asked, but the one I'm about to state.
Yeah. And
I think it has been an anchor. So they were like, what's your big dream? And I think for me, is at the point where I walk into a supermarket and every product on the shelf is sustainable, I'm retired and happily retired. But what does that mean? It's each one of you, and I love SMEs because they're very innovative. But now we need to refresh our thinking. What you've heard about refining the few things, working on scalability and all these things, innovative. There's so many things we do and think, for example, I'm rambling, but this happens when I talk about the big dream. It's just, We have been doing the milkman delivery since 1960. Our grandparents, someone who milks cow in the estate, if not you, brings the container to your house. I remember even I used to do those pickups for our household when I was younger. They come, pick the milk, bring home, and then you use, and the next time you go with your container, or you go leave those containers there, then they fill for you until. Then it disappeared at some point. What are we seeing now? Milk ATMs. Question is, are these innovations coming refreshed from a Western point of view? Apologies for my Western friends. Or can we just think of how can we innovate a little bit in these technologies and make it scalable? We have the people who are making for us soap. See, we had the two chemicals that used to make the blue soap for washing the floors.
Yeah.
We've been doing that for quite some time. Then you see someone soaping, make a product, maybe without the chemicals, the toxic chemicals, put it in a jerry can, throw in a premium price. It's been sold by our Western friends. So we really need to change our mindset and see of all the big dreams, the innovations that we have, can we develop it in a way that's scalable? And the scalable is knowing each gram. If you're making burgers, my brother and I used to make burgers a while back. And when we were making the patties, it was 1 teaspoon of, so everything was documented in a way that if we wake up and decide, you know what, 9 to 5, I'm done. My big dream, I've given up. I am going back to selling burgers. The taste of those burgers then and now should be almost the same. And that's how we need to think about our business, because that's the unlocking of scalability and growth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Noreen, what would be the one question that I should have asked and I didn't?
I think for me it will be more of a comment with regards to SMEs and sustainability. Since we have sleepless nights wondering about tomorrow, like what does tomorrow hold for my business and for me and my family, if you're so worried about tomorrow, then you do everything possible to make sure tomorrow takes place, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot be investing. Kenyans, we love land. We really love land. I don't know how that emanates. So you cannot be investing and trying to amass all this land, apartments, this physical stuff that you might not get to enjoy tomorrow, that your children might not get to enjoy tomorrow. And our colleague from ABSA, mentioned it, and it sounded like an alarming statement.
Yeah.
But your tomorrow is not assured if you, as a business person, you're not thinking on the lines of sustainability. Right?
Yeah.
So it's good, for all businesses, think of the environmental, impact, social impact, governance impact. Just think of every other role that you need to play to ensure that your tomorrow is assured. Otherwise, trust me, there's no need having sleepless nights, wondering whether Fuliza or Hustler Fund or, whichever means or, a bank loan can sustain your business to the next day, wondering if these new government taxes, which we understand, someone told me new ones come up every day, wondering whether you'll be able to tide over these taxes, wondering whether you'll be able to tide over inflation, wondering whether your business will see its 7th birthday. There's no need to worry about all that if you're not focused on sustainability. Thank you.
Okay. Grace, what would be yours?
Mine is a couple of comments, 3.
Okay.
You will always go as far as you see. Let that settle in. You will always go far as you see. And if you don't see yourself as that big boy, you're never going to be that big boy. But guess what? You have every opportunity, every capability to get there. Why? Comment number 2. It is in this time in our Kenyan history that young people, that SMEs understand the importance of maintaining peace in our country. Muliona maandamano. You saw how much we were losing a day. You saw how much shops were vandalized. You saw how much was That is why it is very important for us to understand why we exist and what are the priorities for our businesses. And then, number 3, contributing to the growth of that economy. Because we are the people and we own it. Am I right to say we now understand more than ever? Subsidies are gone. Subsidy of electricity, of fuel, of unga, all at the same time. Cost of living has doubled. Now we are going to triple rings. We understand what that means for us. And not just for us, but for our children's generation and their children's generation. So when we think, how far do we want to go? It should be generation-wise. And to be able to do that and exist like EABL more than 100 years from now, we need to think about sustainability. We need to think about our governance. What is my personal contribution as an SME to the culture of corruption in this country? It is a systemic issue. It is not just at leadership. It is in how we just do business things. It's how we relate with friends. We blackmail everywhere we go. Our own children come and hustle you. They come and hustle you because it's so systemic. But what is your contribution to changing that even before uulize serikali, utanifanyia nini? What will you do as an SME? As far as you go, work backwards and grow for sustainability.
Thank you. I think that's a good point to end it at. Grace, thank you. Noreen, Edna. A round of applause, please.